Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Real Wealth Solutions podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Scully. I am Darren Light, and today we are thrilled and honored to be joined by one of our mentors, coaches, colleagues, partners, Mr. Gino Barbaro. Gino, how are you, man?
Mr. Darren Light, Mr. Greg Scully, thank you for having me on this early morning. I didn't meditate. Greg meditated, and it didn't work. I'm ready to go, my friends.
Awesome. Gino, if you wouldn't mind, just take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we're going to get deep into the story, but really just a really short bio of who Gino is.
I will make this quick, boys. 6 kids, ages 21 to 6 years old. We homeschool the kids. I am a former New Yorker, reformed. I left New York 4 years ago. Thank the Lord. Man, I'm a really smart dude right now, huh? I'm homeschooling and I live in Florida. I mean, who gets better than that, right? I knew this was coming, by the way, boys. I knew it was coming, right? So 2008 was my great recession for me, my great pandemic. I was in the restaurant business. I had a restaurant with my family. At that point, we had it for about 15 years and life was great. Small businesses actually made money back then. I was doing really, really well. I enjoyed it. Then something called the internet really took over. And I think the Great Recession compounded the internet, compounded competition. All of a sudden, people are delivering food and that whole scalability comes in every business and takes over. And, I'm working harder. I'm making less money. And thankfully, I met Jake, who was even smarter than me because he left New York in 2011 and he went to Knoxville, Tennessee. Boys, I'm sorry. We didn't know where Knoxville, Tennessee was back in 2011, but thank God he went to Knoxville, Tennessee. He moves down there in 2011. I'm, I don't want to say I'm the guru of multifamily, but compared to Jake, I was, because he knew nothing and I knew a little bit, right? I had made a couple of big mistakes on some other projects. I was into mobile home parks, didn't know that. I did a strip mall in New York. I didn't do well on that. But what I did do was I went and got my education. I went and got a couple of coaching programs. I learned what a cap rate was. Can you imagine investing in real estate and not knowing what cap rates are or cash on cash?
I don't think it matters anymore.
Well, it did back then. Well, it did back then. At least you're looking at a deal and go, well, this is not a good deal. I just had that, I love the property. I fall in love with the property. So that's how I was investing 15 years ago. And it doesn't work out too well in the end. So I meet Jake. We partner up. Love the partnership. He's a hardworking dude. I mean, but we were both W-2, so we didn't have that scalability. We just wanted to get into real estate to make a couple $1,000 a month. And, after 18 months, we found the first deal. Then after 3 months after that, we found the second deal. And, looking back at 2013, guys, it was different. Back then, there were a lot of deals out there, but the economy sucked. I mean, it was a 1% GDP growth. Rents in Knoxville were like $320 a month for a 1-bedroom. Can you imagine that? I mean, it was, wow. It was really the economy. And actually Knoxville, they said, was like the 4th city in the US to pull out of that recession. So we did get an elevation, but hey, there were deals, there was no money and there was no business sentiment and there was no job growth. So, it was a risk back then, just like it is now.
So for our listeners, one thing I forgot to mention at the intro is this is actually our Road to 500 series, and we wanted to have Gino on because, this series is all about what it takes to get to 500. There's sort of a magical number for those of us to get into multifamily and try to get there as fast as we can and talk about some of the bumps and bruises on the road. I guess time-wise, how long did it actually, was that a number for you? And how long did it actually take you to get there in regards to the calendar? And maybe share with us a couple of like Greg said before we started recording, a couple of bumps in the road that just really hurt, that if you had to do different or mistakes that, that you can help other people along their journey not make.
Sure. Do you mind if I share the 7 steps? I have 7 steps to getting into multifamily.
You share whatever you need to.
Let me go through this for a couple of minutes, and I think everyone on the listening to this will get some value out of it. And then I'll let you know what I think 500 units to me is something different than what 500 units to somebody else is. 500 units to me is what my own 500 without syndicating. So there's a little difference having more equity, refinancing a deal, and putting more money into the deal. So when you first start out, the first step in any journey is having that epiphany. And I think Greg Scully, when Greg started Jake and Gino 5 or 6 years ago, he's driving his potato truck out there. He had the epiphany, and I had the epiphany back in 2008. I'm like, this is not working for me. I don't like what I'm doing anymore. I need to do something else. And I love multifamily. I love, because I had a fourplex. I loved residence. My mom had a restaurant building. She had 3 tenants upstairs. I'm out one Friday night. It's snowing. 11 o'clock at night. I didn't make anybody at the restaurant. I'm throwing sand down, salt down in the parking lot. And I look up, and those 3 residents, I see the lights on. I'm like, she's getting paid right now. I'm not getting paid. I worked all week, and she's still getting paid. So that was my epiphany. I'm like, I gotta do something. I gotta do something else, even if it's a side hustle. And for me, in the beginning, it was a side hustle. The second thing was you need education. I mean, if you're not getting educated, there are people out there that are very smart. It's not, you don't need to be super intelligent to get into real estate. You just need to know a few things in multifamily. And that's what I did. I went out and I got coaching, and I took it serious. 6 months, I really busted my butt, learned what markets I needed to invest in, learned the model I was looking for. The third thing was that massive action. You need to take massive action. If you're not taking massive action, just sitting on the sidelines and not underwriting deals, not doing property tours, not calling up brokers, not sourcing capital, it's not going to happen, especially now and how competitive it is now. So that third one, I took some massive action. I was working at the restaurant 55, 60 hours a week. I was homeschooling the kids in the morning, going to work, working during lunchtime, coming home at 9 o'clock at night and working at that time. And I was doing podcasts in between. I was off during the week. It was a lot of action going on. The first step is all of a sudden you're putting in deals. You find that you land that first deal, and it doesn't matter how big it is. It could be a fourplex, it could be 100 unit, 10 unit, whatever it is. For me, I am a kinesthetic learner. I need to do things, and I'm not a smart guy. I need to do it and then do it again and do it again. You know how many times I've read cost segregation to understand it? Probably like 20, and I still don't understand what cost segregation is, but I just got to keep doing it, keep trying it. And that first deal that Jake and I landed was proof of concept for me. It was a big deal for us. I unfortunately looked at it as not an entrepreneurial venture. That's what most of us do when we first start out in real estate, buying real estate. We think of it as landlords. We don't think of it as an entrepreneur, right? Jake and Gino, we create multifamily entrepreneurs because all of a sudden, as you start scaling up, you're getting into multifamily because you want it to be a business. And you guys said you want to talk about partnerships and butts and seats. It's a team sport. There's a lot of different responsibilities you can do in real estate. So that first deal was, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And that's the second deal we got, right? We're at 25 units. The second deal is 36. We have 60 units within like the first 3 or 4 months that we bought it. And it's a little overwhelming because you have 2 different properties. We're both doing W-2 jobs. We're both treating this like a real estate venture where we're landlording. We don't really know how to property manage. We're learning the ropes. By the third one, within a year, we have 200 units, right? It's unbelievable what happened. We found a great partner. We found somebody who had a strong balance sheet that helped us buy this third deal. And he's since been our partner ever since. The biggest learning lesson on that, when you start buying more deals, is it's time to hire somebody. And that is probably the toughest thing for an entrepreneur, is to let go of the reins and to say, I need somebody to help me out here. And that was really hard for us to scale up and to say, wow, we need to hire property managers and we need to stop cutting the grass. Those are the 2 things. And we need to stop doing our own bookkeeping because, Jake sucks at bookkeeping. But I didn't listen to him. He is the worst bookkeeper ever. And I mean, like for $25 an hour, he's wasting his time, and we're doing podcasts and he's editing podcasts. I mean, come on, but you don't know what you don't know. And you just do what you're doing. But then you realize all of a sudden you have other things you need to do, and there's a higher and better use of your time. So let's focus on what's better and a higher, better use of your time. In multifamily, it's sourcing capital and it's sourcing deals as you get to a certain point. And that's what we started focusing on. I think that's what allowed us to go from that 200 units to 1,000 units within like maybe 3 years, 3.5 years, focusing on those deals. That's the next step. Just continue to buy more deals and more deals. I think the next one is, like I said, hiring those people. Just start hiring those teammates and start working on it. And that was really important for us. The next step, you need to have something called systems. If you haven't had it before, you're going to become the mom and pop, and Greg and Darren and Gino are going to buy property from you. That's what it really comes down to. You need to have a website. You need to have systems. You need to have what we call a cadence of accountability, having weekly calls with your team, having quarterly priorities. You need to have what we call core values. I mean, you can start buying these deals, but you're really starting to build a company right now. And all of a sudden, everyone needs to start beating to the same drum. You need to start hiring people with those core values. Your vendors, if your vendors aren't doing a good job, we're having a rough time with a couple of vendors right now. I think the core values are not shining through. They're not extreme ownership. They're not making it happen and on our team. So you know what? We're very value those vendors. They're probably out in the next month or 2. That's what you need to start doing once you start building up, your business. And for us, we didn't know that. We went out and we got coached. We went out and we found coaches that had a program called Scaling Up. It's Vern Harnish's group. And it was amazing. It really helped us build that business that we needed, that we lacked. We didn't have level 10 meetings. We didn't have daily, morning huddles, all that stuff we learned. It's just like getting into multifamily. I didn't know what a cap rate was 10 years ago. I didn't know what an L10 meeting was 3 years ago. But once you started implementing it, everyone's on the same team, right? And they're all on the same page. We're communicating throughout, and you're able to scale up, and you're able to pull yourself out of those day-to-day duties, put somebody else in. They're held accountable. They're reporting to you, so you can start working on other projects. And I think the last step is just to continue to scale up and continue to implement more systems. You're always refining systems and adding systems in business. It can be a little frustrating because you think you're done, but when you think you're done, something else pops up. So for us, it was just continuing on and adding those different systems in. And Darren, I guess to finish your question, the biggest mistake for us was just being the IMA guys, too long. It took us too long to start hiring people and pulling ourselves out of certain duties. And it feels great sometimes. You're doing this menial work and it feels like you're accomplishing something. You don't get paid for effort. You get paid for results. And I think this young generation is going to wake up one morning and go, wow, I'm doing all this work, but I'm not getting paid. Yeah, but what are your results? Are you finding and closing deals? Are you bringing home cash flow? Or are you doing a little bit of bookkeeping? If you're doing bookkeeping, you're getting paid a bookkeeper salary. Sorry, everybody. If you're bringing home deals and you're creating equity and you're bringing value and you're buying deals, then you're going to get paid for that skill set. So figure out what skill set you want to learn and you'll be okay in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Thank you.
First three kind of, epiphany, education, massive action. Those can all happen and usually do happen before you even own a property. I think that's where the foundational stuff is. 4 through 7 tend to happen because once you buy a property, some of your time gets defined for you. You have to operate this thing now.
Yeah.
It's interesting the hire and systems thing, and that's kind of where we're finding ourselves at. Is you get to a certain point. I think you might hit another epiphany, in that I've been on a deck screwing down deck boards and have wondered to myself, is this probably what I need to be doing right now? And it, on some level it was. But also there's some realization that you got to figure out how to.
That's right.
To get back behind the laptop.
And that held me back at the restaurant, Greg. The problem with me was at the restaurant, I had one restaurant for 20 something years. How the heck do I have 1,500 units in 6 years? I think I grew as a person, but also I had those limiting beliefs of my dad. That old generation was, you've got to be there. I'll give you, there's a parable in Italian. It says, l'occhio del padrone ingrassa il cavallo. In Italian, that means the eye of the owner fattens the horse, because in Italy, everything is either farms or food, right? So basically, it means that you're there, you're taking care of your horse, your eyes, you're on the job all the time, 24/7, and the owner's got to be there all the time. So that's what I was ingrained with at the restaurant. So when I went into the restaurant, I'm in the kitchen. My best and highest use was to be outside talking to the customers. My brother was there, but I should have been doing that. I should have been cultivating those relationships. I should have been looking for money and saying, hey, let's go open up another restaurant. But I wasn't trained to do that. I was trained to do freaking wash dishes. That's what my comfort level was. And I blame myself for that, for all those years hiding back there and saying, you know what, what's better? Why am I still here? And I'm a guy doing it there. And then when I met Jake, everything completely changed, because I'm in a different business venture right now. I'm not with my family, and I'm looking at business in a different light, and having a partner to push me and to realize that was fantastic. But I was the same way you were. There's nothing wrong with being on the deck. Just realize that there are better places to be. And if you need to be there today, that's great. But as you grow the business, you're going to say the deck is comfortable. I like the deck, but that's not where I make money on the deck. I make money looking for deals and working with investors.
Yeah, we're as a company, Greg and I, we're there. We're at that transition right now. We've already talked about, bringing management in-house. We still haven't pushed the button, but will. And so there's a lot of simple things behind the scenes too that we're still doing that, we want to get out of. So it is definitely needing to pull that trigger.
Yeah, I mean, speak to a little bit, and this is something that I've started to do is making sure I take an inventory of things after we just closed a property.
Hmm.
So I'm being very intentional of spending some time taking an inventory of how it went, things we should have done better, things I'd like to change moving forward. Do you do that? Do you do that on a regular basis, or how do you properly recognize your shortcomings and your opportunities on a regular basis?
Well, the weird thing is every time you do a deal, it depends what kind of the market cycle you're in, right? I mean, the deals that we're buying today, we probably weren't buying 2 and 3 years ago, right? This is part of the market cycle. We're buying assets that are a little bit newer. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you're buying assets that were a little bit hairier and that you were able to fix. So as we go through a deal, we have those due diligence docs, and we're constantly adding new stuff and takeover docs. So we're constantly adding it, and you're going through that deal mentally. What do you need to do? Starting the LLC, the inspector, walk in the property logs. If you're doing a syndication, syndication docs, you're dealing with your investors. So you definitely have those checklists. And for me, as you go through the deal, what we've done, we've created a property log for every one of our properties. Like I said, we just started doing this. In every property log, we have like those, weekly L10s with our property managers, Jake does. And every quarter, we want to do this every quarter to every 6 months. On those property logs, we have the detailed analysis of every property, whether it's gutters, when do we do it? When do we power wash? Who the utility company is, right? Trying to think of other things. Who's the pest control company? When was the parking lot last sealed? When were the roofs last done? We want a real catalog log of each single property, because when you have 1 or 2 properties, you're there every day. It's not a big deal. But when you have 18 or 19 different properties spread over 700 different buildings, whatever, you really need to have that catalog. So when you buy a deal, what we do now is we go in there, we find out all the components, the age of the components, we really break it down, and we really take a detailed analysis of what CapEx we need to do. And I think, Greg, the other thing that we never really did that we've been doing the last couple of years is we really try to create budgets. Do we come in with the budgets? Not really, not all the time, but we're pretty close where we want to spend and allocate our money. And I think it's funny when you look at your personal life and your business life, you should do that with your personal life also. You should have a personal budget of how much money is coming into your life and where your money is being spent. Are you spending it? Jake likes to say SAT, Starbucks, Amazon, and Target. You look at your credit card, man, you look at the end of the month, how the hell did I spend so much money on Amazon? That's the problem. You have a leaky faucet. You don't know where it's going. It's not bad that you're spending it on Amazon, but maybe you want to allocate it to somewhere else. And that's what's going on with the property budget. I mean, if you're spending a lot of money on ceiling fans that are $150, because property managers love to spend extra money, right? But you have to allocate that money and figure out where your budget is. Do those budgets every year. Come in and work with those property managers on coming in with those prices.
You guys, after the closing, do you sit down and review the transaction, the steps from the time you got it under leading up to LOI, PSA, the whole 9 yards? Do you look back at that? At those?
We don't do that as much. Yeah, as much as we used to, because I think I'm on with Jake right now, and we've done enough right now. Like we're in contract on a deal right now. We did inspections last week. They're going back out this week, and even the way we do inspections, our first or second, third, fourth deals, we just had a property inspector. Jake would go out. Now, as the team's gotten bigger, we bring our CapEx crew out there. We bring our flooring crew out there. We bring our electrician out there, our plumber out there. We scope all the lines, HVACs. So we do a much more thorough analysis of it. In the beginning, we didn't have the team. Didn't stop us from growing, right? As you start growing, you have more team members. And, we're going back to today to look in crawl spaces because we couldn't get into them last time. And actually now what we're doing is Mikey T goes into every unit, taking pictures of every single unit, knowing what we need to do as we take this property over, that every, if there's 85 units on this property, we've got 85 different pictures. We know we need to change 20 refrigerators. We know we need to do 30 countertops, whatever that is. That's how granular we've gotten. But you don't start that way. I don't want to overwhelm anybody. You don't need to be there on day one. Just as you get bigger, you can control the process. And that's one system that you've put into place where you're going on these properties. And Jake loves to do property tours. So he goes and he's walking these properties and he's doing these tours. That's one example of where you need to utilize your time to do that, because there's a lot of stuff you can find on that property tour to retrade and get money back if you need to. And if not, you need to have your investors or ourselves to be comfortable that, hey, this deal is really good. I don't see anything glaringly wrong with it. Let's go ahead with this deal.
Yeah, I like the property log idea quite a bit. what I find helpful about that is that you've got something that, it takes a certain amount of effort to get up and going.
It
It's a
does.
little boring. It's granular. It's just,
Well, Greg,
a
think.
form of data entry, but then it's sitting there on the shelf in evergreen, and anybody can
Mhm.
pick it up and see what's going
Yes.
on without
Yes.
having to find that one person that went on the property tour and, hey, do you remember how old the bulk of the AC units were?
Hmm.
It takes a lot of potential mental capacity off the table and just puts it into a document or a folder somewhere.
And you got to use it though. That's the thing. But like you
Yeah.
were saying with decks, when was the last time you power washed the deck or stained the deck? I don't know. Well, if you know you did it last year, maybe you don't have to do it this year. Maybe you can allocate money elsewhere. It really holds you and your team accountable to what's going on. Hey, the fence is a dog park. Did you do those? Are these up? Do you have signage up there? How's the signage looking in front of the property? Because when you do have a lot of property spread across and your property managers don't know what to look for, you can't blame your employees. You have to give the direction and the drive. If they have this document, they know it. And then you know what? When your property manager leaves, next one comes on, it's already there. You don't have to retrain the person. They already have the information there. That's stuff that as you're scaling up, you learn. When you have one or two or three properties and one or two or three employees, it doesn't really make a difference. But as you're scaling up, these things start to matter a lot.
Yeah, just systems where it's nice to not have to think about what you're going to do every day,
Yes.
as opposed to just taking a handbook or a checklist and saying, this is what I'm going to do, because we've already predetermined that these are the priorities. Because I can't, how many times have I driven away from a property inspection and said, oh, we forgot to look at,
Yes.
try and keep that to a minimum if possible.
Yep.
Hey, it's Greg from Real Wealth Solutions. If you'd like to know more about our passive income opportunities, jump onto realwealth.solutions and hit that schedule a call button. We're always happy to talk about our multifamily and flip projects and to answer any questions you may have. Again, that's realwealth.solutions. We look forward to hearing from you. And now, back to the podcast.
Greg and I were looking at a property, a smaller 40 unit or so outside of Johnson City about a year ago. And the management company had been managing this property for a while, and common sense, but I've never thought about it. And we still don't implement it, but yet this is something I think we should implement. With the scalability that you guys have now, these property logs, every 10, for example, we don't let a water heater sit in a unit for more than 10 years. We don't let an HVAC unit sit in a unit for more than 15 years. Whether it's working great, we just change it because we're maintenance issues down the road, and their expenses on these units were very low. And I asked that question. She said, yeah, this is what we do. We have these, just change them. And she mentioned other things like smoke detectors and light bulbs. And
Yes.
And it just made sense to me. So I think that's another, and that goes back to tying that all in with your budgets. Instead of waiting for something to happen, know that you're going to have this many for this year. You write it off, whatever that is, cost of doing business, and it just made sense.
So I challenge you to right now. We do quarterly priorities. We have our quarterly priority meeting. It's scheduled for March 25th. We spend almost the whole day because Jake and I are like you guys. We like to shotgun and machine gun, like have 15 different priorities and have so many things flying around. And that this took years and years to pull through this property log. I mean, Jake's been dying to do this, but things seem to pop up. During COVID, the pandemic, we have virtual leasing, virtual tours. Then we have essential workers. We have less people working. So things are popping up. So if you want something to happen that's really important, a priority is anything that takes longer than 8 hours to do. And what I would challenge everybody, if you've got 2 or 3 properties right now, it's the perfect time to do it because you only have 2 or 3. We have 15, whatever, 18 different properties. We have employees that are helping us do it. So Jake's not doing it. He gives a direction, and we have an amazing employee. Big shout out to Chelsea. She grabs and does all these special projects, and she's doing a fantastic job with it. But don't wait for something like this. If you know it, I've told you right now. So everyone on this call should have a log of a property, every single property. And even if they're themselves, it's okay. Because when you go on that property, like Greg said, did you forget to look at the gutters, right? Did you power wash the building? When's the last time you can't remember these things. There's not reason. You don't need that mental capacity, the mental energy to worry about, did you power wash washed a building a year ago. That should all be documented. And then when you're done with that property, you hand it over to your property manager and say, we need to meet every 6 months with the maintenance guys, and this is what we need to do. So really important that you guys do that, but you have to set it. You have to do, we do quarterly priorities every quarter. We set up what we need to do for the next, next quarter. And it's important because we have guidance. It's like, to get the 500 units, how are you doing that? You're setting goals. Well, our quarterly priorities are setting goals for the next quarter. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch gears a little bit back to the beginning, because you mentioned, it took 18 months to get the first deal. You quickly got the second, about 3 months later. Then within 2 years, you had a couple hundred units. And now you look like an absolute genius because you're Knoxville, Tennessee, but that was not what Knoxville, Tennessee was, 4 or 5 years ago. So there's a common barrier is, when is the right time? So what you have gone through is a great example of the buy real estate and wait type mentality. Maybe you're far better off than you imagine you would be because of tailwinds that part of COVID, is a lot of people are moving down to this area. How do you advise people to just get off the bench and onto the field?
That's a $1 million question.
That is $1 million. I mean, yeah, because you have to go in. It still has to be fundamentally a good deal. There's lots of caveats to that, but
for me, when I started, Greg, I was desperate. I think there's an element of fear. We all have fear in our lives, right? And I think that holds us back. When I got over the element of fear that would hold me back, that would paralyze me, I quickly into anger. So I can get into a little life coaching right now. Really, the 7 levels of energy. Victim is number 1, right? Woe is me, the pandemic. Everybody, we're all hitting the pandemic at the same point. If I was in the restaurant and I'm in New York right now, I would be a different person than I am right now. I'd probably be a little more pissed off than I am right now. I was, when you're at the victim level, as Stephen Covey says, the ability to respond, you have no responsibility in your life. It's everybody else's fault. And hey, it may be, but that's not getting you anywhere, right? And that's what I felt like I was at the restaurant those years. Like, oh man, the recession, there's no jobs out there right now. Nobody's coming out to eat. I have Grubhub. My pizza's the best, but there's so much competition. The marketplace doesn't give a crap about that. It's just too bad, right? Anger is a second level. When you get really pissed off, you start taking action, right? That's what happens. You start figuring it out. And you ask, when is it time? There is never the right time until you are ready for it, until you have that epiphany and you go, wow, I could figure this out. Then it might take 3, 4, 5 years to actually become really successful. There's a lot of work in between those steps. But for me, I had a lot of work in between those steps because I met Jake. Then it took us 18 months to find the first deal. And you know why? You guys have met Jake. He's a little bull in a china shop. You think you're out there. You first start out. You think you're the one who's got the money and the brokers are doing you a favor. It was the same thing back then. No, they've got the deals. That's why it took us 18 months, because we didn't know how to actually talk to the brokers. We thought they were doing us a favor. So by the time we figured it out, oh, wow, a broker brings us a deal. And the second deal came from the same broker. So you have to figure that stuff out. So for everybody out there, assess the situation. I think more importantly, why multifamily? Why any endeavor? Why anything, right? So for me, I wanted multifamily because I had the restaurant. Everyone's telling me you got 6 kids, you got to marry 6 kids, you got 6 kids going to college, all that crap. So I'm afraid my 401k is not going to make enough money, and I'm not making enough money. So I just wanted to make a little bit of money on the side, a little side hustle. That first deal we bought, I was like, holy crap, this looks pretty lucrative. I think if I buy another deal, I may be able to make a few grand a month on cash flow. This is awesome. Didn't know anything else about real estate. I didn't know all the other benefits. When we bought that third deal, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I was like, crap, man. And that's when I said to myself, I can do this. But for everybody out there, assess what your situation is, assess what your goals are. You may not want to go to 500 units. That's fine. You may want to just get 1 or 2 deals and just make a few $1,000 on the side, right? To pay some bills like I did. But the possibilities are endless. I mean, it's all depends on what you want to do. Because I'm telling you again, Jake was a W-2 guy. He was working for pharma. I mean, he was the W-2 guy. I was the typical small business owner, that mindset. When we got together and we started buying deals, like you said, we did have tailwinds, but the other important thing, Greg, is you have to have a long-term mindset. I know a lot of people out there who have bought real estate, made a ton of money, then sold it. We could have sold all of our assets and said, hey, you know what? Great. I bought it at 30 a door. I'm selling it at 60 a door. We didn't do that. We still have most of the stuff that we bought because we want to build a business. We're here to build legacy wealth, and we're really here. We want to get cash flow. That's what we want from these things. And then, you know what? If there's a couple of deals we can peel off and sell, that's fine. But the cost segregation, the appreciation of the properties, the ability to, to build that business, that's what we wanted. So for everybody out there, become clear on what you want. We don't lack motivation. We lack clarity. And for me, all those years at the restaurant, I wasn't clear on what I wanted. Once I met Jake and I picked Knoxville, you got to be lucky sometimes, right? Because Knoxville back then was not what Knoxville is now. But still, I would have hit it some way where another. Jake could have moved to Dallas, or he could have moved to Florida. He was moving somewhere. I would have gone into some kind of market. You could have thrown. What about if I went to Atlanta? Can you imagine back in 2011 buying stuff in Atlanta, 20, 25, 30 a door? It's 150 a door, 180 a door right now. So it's the same thing. I mean, but I started. But if you're starting now, market's going to do this. It's going to go down, plateau, and go back up. It's not going to totally drop. So whether you're starting now, you need a little bit of headwind yourself. You need to create those relationships. You need to learn the education. You need to find partners, investors out there. That all takes a little bit of time to get off the ground. So no matter where you start, the market cycles are constantly changing. So just start today. When the market does correct, you'll know that it's correcting because you'll know what the hell is going on. If you're going to wait till the market crashes, it's too late because Greg, Darren, and Gino already have the relationships to go buy those deals. So get into it right now. Don't waste time. It may take you a little bit longer to find a deal. That's fine, but you're going to find a deal sooner or later.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of newbies, if you will, struggle with. It's all about relationships. So how you're going to get into the market. It's not just meeting a broker for a first time. It's leveraging someone who already knows the broker, name dropping and making those introductions or learning who those people are.
And also, people want somebody to give them permission or feel like they have permission. And because I got an email from somebody off of Bigger Pockets, and I'm in California. This is happening. I can do this appreciation play, or I found this deal in Arkansas, and it's better, And it was the old, what should I do? Which one's the better deal? And I'm like, and I brought it back around to what you were just talking about, Gino. It's like you just got to concentrate on what your goals are. That classic answer, but it really does come down to that. You will eventually move. You can't be looking for somebody to say now's the right time. I mean, what's the difference between you and somebody else that started at about the same time? Is a lot of it may be that you just actually started. You actually purchased something. Every time you started something new, first time I rode a bike, I fell down once or twice before I was jumping over garbage cans. So you got to be prepared to start and scrape a knee a little bit.
You said something important there, which I think maybe most people probably didn't even catch. You really need to know how to say no, right? That's what happened with Jake and I. And I was sitting on a call with the gentleman we're going to do business with, and I look at him as a mentor because he's a really smart dude. He says three things: simplicity, probability, and leverage. That's what you're looking for in a business. And he loved our framework. He says, what kind of deals you guys buying? Boom. 80s, B2Cs, 100 units plus, cap rates around 5 to 6, brick. And he was like, wow, you guys know exactly what you want. You're focused on what you want. So when something comes that's not in your avenue, we don't even waste our time looking at it. We don't waste the mental energy. There's an RV park in Knoxville a little while ago, a couple months ago. We got the shiny object syndrome. We're like, you know what? This looks good. And it probably is a good deal, but it's not in our wheelhouse. We need to really relearn it. And it's like, you know what? I don't know. We don't want to get into that. We don't want to lose because we're trying to build a really amazing property management company where we're franchisable. We have all these systems. If we take on a different type of asset that we need to learn how to manage that's going to pull us away from what we're doing here. And, when you're first starting out, you really need to focus on what it is you're looking for. For us, we're actually looking to develop now, believe it or not. We're trying to buy property to develop. That's a totally different thing, but that's a subset of what we're doing. It's still multifamily. It's just development. We're dealing with architects and we have a contractor that we're working with. It's still multifamily, but I say everybody out there, become clear on what you want. Because if you can say no quick, you can move on to the next opportunity, and it gives you clarity as well.
You said simplicity, probability, and what was the last one?
And leverage.
Leverage.
That's what you want in a business. You want simplicity. You don't need to make things really super complicated, right? And you want probability that it's going to work. I mean, if you're buying a three cap with no value add, what's the probability that's going to work? Probably not, right? And leverage comes in so many different fashions. Other people's money, and more importantly for an entrepreneur like Elon Musk, other people's time. You have employees helping you out. You're not the only one doing stuff. So when you have 1,000 units and you have other people, the residents are paying your stuff. So you got to think of it that way. Can you get into a business with simplicity, probability, and leverage? And for me, the restaurant business was not simple. I mean, like if you're Papa John's, you're that's a simple place because it's real easy. You dough's frozen, everything's frozen, boom, they have systems. I didn't want that kind of restaurant. I wanted to have really quality food. So it's very hard to scale up an operation like that and to create, 5 or 6 or 700 different units of that, because it wasn't a simple process, because it's all dependent on chefs, to find all those chefs and to be able to build those processes was very difficult. I think for me, multifamily, it's pretty simple. I mean, if you go in there, you can have all the property management, all aligned. You can have all those systems in there, right? Probability, the way we're buying the stuff, we're buying it at a certain number. We know what we're buying, and then using the leverage component of it as well.
I think one thing too that new people underestimate, if they're looking at a Jake and Gino, and even really to be honest, if they're looking at a Darren and Greg, well, I can't do what they're doing. Well, as you go along in this journey, organically, your buying criteria changes.
Yes.
And or also your ability to buy changes. And the way you can do things and the way you look at it. And I think that goes back to your quarterly meetings and monthly meetings. Like Greg and Kim and I have a weekly call every week for like an hour. What's going on? Who's doing what? For the same reasons, because you just evolve and you have more opportunity, and it's a long game. And in multifamily specifically, or in entrepreneurship, people underestimate. It's not a get rich quick anything that you do.
I'm going to give a quick and shameless plug. Creative Cash, right? The reason why I hold this book up, Bill Ham did an amazing job. First 400 units, he did not use a bank. He used creative financing. Is Bill Ham doing creative financing right now? No, he's evolved. The idea is when you start something out, you want to learn as many techniques, as many strategies, and being open as possible, right? Because you may use owner financing. The reason why we wrote the book, all of a sudden, you're going to see owner finance deals. Owner financing has been a stigma the last 3 or 4 years. Jake and I did 2 amazing owner finance deals. They were unbelievable, great deals. One, literally, I think that one we did a 281 unit deal, owner financed. It was an $11 million deal, no money down. The seller held a 20% note. Right? I mean, like everyone's going to say that's never happened before. Well, it happened. We walked away with 120 grand at closing. Okay. The title agent is like, I've never seen this before. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen it before either, but doesn't mean you can't do it. Right. But my point is, like Darren just said, don't assume anything, right? Don't assume that you can't get into multifamily because you don't have money. No, you don't have skill. That's the thing. And you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know syndication when we first started. So for us to refi 11 million bucks and put into the next deal, that's all I knew. When I hit syndication, we were already comfortable with what we were doing. It was just another tool in the toolbox. So whether you're syndicating deals, whether you're JVing, whether you're using creative financing, those are all tools that you need to learn in the education phase. And then as you're looking at a deal, it may not work conventionally. Hey, let me see if I can do a master lease or I can do a seller finance on this deal. That's the thing that you said, Darren, right now. That's really important. Having more options is going to be really awesome for you if you're an investor.
Case in point, right? As soon as this book comes out, we have a colleague that read it and has it now. And I'm like, yeah, it's that easy. About, I don't mean to get off on a tangent, but what I love about Bill Ham, who wrote that book with you guys, is the fact that has been in his mind for years. He had I can say this because I had the conversation. He had a limited mindset on writing the book. So not only involving in just entrepreneurship and the business side, but mentally and the mindset game. And we can kind of go off on that if you want to. But I love the fact that he's had this boiled up inside of him and just didn't know how to put it on paper or didn't think he was valuable enough to do it, however you want to term it.
And it was this simple. This is how simple it was, Greg, Darren, for him to get the book out. He's at the boot camp in July of last year with my wife, and he's talking to my wife, and my wife has this gift. I guess no one wants to let her down. It's really freaking annoying, to be honest with you. So she's like, well, why don't you just write it? He's like, okay. She goes, when are you going to call me, next week? He's like getting bullied by this like little 5'4"
Yeah.
blonde chick. And he's like, okay. So they get on the call and he starts writing the book. And I'm like, dude, really? She's got to tell you to write the book? What's wrong with you? But that's what it is. Nobody wants to let somebody else down, right? And they get on the call every week. And I don't even know what they talked about. They probably talk about the kids and the weather. And he builds a gardener and he likes guns. And I don't know. But does my wife know anything about real estate? She calls refi and roll. She calls it refi and roll. I'm like, Jewel, I've been saying this word for the last 6 years. I've made you rich off this word. You don't even know what the hell it is. How do you get a guy to write a book on real estate if you don't even know real estate? But that's not the point. The point is that you need somebody sometimes, that space where it's important that, you know what, Bill got on the call every week, held her accountable, kept writing words, and he just needed somebody to say, yeah, it's okay. And he's a smart dude. He's very intelligent. That's the problem. Sometimes you get in your own head and say, am I smart enough to do this? Or do I have the credibility to do it? But if someone's there telling you, yeah, you do. And you know what? Stop wasting time and stop being afraid. Put it on paper. If it sucks, you sell 30 books, you wasted 6 months of your life and you move on. But if you don't do it, you'll never know. He's a best-selling author. We've got almost 100 reviews on the book. We've done an amazing launch. Without that person every week holding you accountable, he wouldn't have done it. And that's a crazy thing. My wife, of all people, she got a bigger acknowledgement than I did. Listen to this. Special thanks to Gino Barbaro for her encouragement in my writing. If it wasn't for her personal coaching, I wouldn't have been able to sit down long enough to get this book written. Jake and Gino, thank you for all your support. That's it. She got a bigger acknowledgement than I did. You know what I'm saying, bro?
Well, I mean, there was something that she brought to the table that really struck a chord. And,
exactly. I'm just saying, I think it's ironic, the irony, and I joke around with her all the time, and she really deserves a lot of credit because she's an amazing person, right? But that's the point. Like, when is it time for Bill to write the book? It was time 10 years ago because he did this stuff 10 years ago, but he wasn't ready until he was ready mentally, until he was grown, until he became an entrepreneur and he was ready to go. And somebody said, you need to write the book, sit down and do it. And it was a really cool process with him. He calls himself lazy. He's not a lazy person. Sometimes he's not focused and he doesn't have somebody to say, do this. But man, when we did the project, every week we're on calls. We're on calls with Scribe. We were actually ahead of schedule with them. When we launched the book, we did a 2-day Facebook challenge. We did it at the boot camp. So he was there every step of the way. So sometimes you just need that partner or that little additional push to hold you accountable.
Mm-hmm. Let's stay on the simplicity thing a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because I think that's a big problem is you're trying to get in, you're focusing on multifamily. Deals are hard to come by. You see a mobile home park come up that, the OM looks good. There's some really great numbers there. But and we're guilty of the same thing is
so are we.
Only now that we're 4 deals into our career do I feel like I'm getting pretty comfortable with not with everything, but with the realization what has to happen when and how and things like that. And that's not something that I want to give up to chase down something that I would have to relearn new processes for, because I think the simplicity leads to the second one, the probability. If you kind of stay in your lane and you stick to what I'm not saying don't learn new things, but it wasn't until you guys had a handle on owning units together in a small partnership, and then that was being run reasonably well and things were going good. Now let's look at the syndication side of this and add it to the toolbox. So that's a long way for me to say I think there's a tendency for people to try and want to do everything that comes across their plate just to get started. And it takes a lot of discipline I'm having a much easier time saying no these days.
Well, Greg, what I would say to everybody right now, if you're not taking deals down, there are so many more things that you could possibly be doing. I mean, I see Darren every 2 months. I love it. He comes to the boot camps. He's networking. He's building his investor database, right? That's one thing you could be doing. The next thing you could be doing is read books, educate yourself, go on webinars, go to networking events. The next thing you could be doing, underwriting deals and going out and networking with brokers. Even if you're not finding deals, being out there, because when the dam breaks, you're there. The broker is going to call you. We've got a student, Anthony Vicino, in the academy. Last year, they expected to take down a couple hundred units. They took down maybe 40 or 50. Really underwhelming for them, disappointing. But guess what? Anthony wrote a book last year. So he's going to be launching the book with us in July of this year. We're gonna publish it with him. I mean, he could have complained, hummed and hemmed and said, I'm not really getting any deals. But guess what? He uses time wisely. He wrote a book. So when you're out there doing it, learn. Maybe it's time to go back and get some coaching, get back and get some more education right now. Learn these systems, right? Learn. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? I know multifamily really well, because now you guys probably get a deal across your desk and you're like, this is yes, no, maybe so. But maybe you find somebody in the mobile home park space who's already doing that really well, and you partner with that person if you want to do it instead of reinventing the wheel. That may be something that you want to do. For us, development seems really, really, really good right now. We're not going to be doing it on our own. We're actually partnering with a contractor. He's going to be helping us out. They have the skill set. Jake and Gino ain't going to be out there working with architects and digging and stuff like that. We're partnering with somebody else. I think that's an opportunity for us, because we see down the road, we're not looking to put on thousands of units a year. We want 500 to 1,000 units max every year. Really good units, because we can't scale up. Right? You said about goals. We have employees. We have like over 60 employees in the property management. As we buy more deals, we have to scale that part of it up. So our mindset is, let's own less units, but let's let those units be a lot more profitable per door. Let's build a business and we'll be okay. We're vertically integrated. Whereas some companies like to do third-party property management, and they can scale up to 3, 4, 5,000 units easily, because they have third party, because they don't have to worry about employees internally. It really all depends on what you're looking for in your business.
Mm-hmm.
I think Greg touched on it. As our progression is, we have things more simple. He's made things more simple. We have a list of, non-negotiables when you're looking at a deal, flood zones and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And you learn those things along the way, and you learn the business better along the way, which makes it simplistic. Like, what I love about having him as an awesome partner is, when he can look at a deal quickly and know if it's got wheels or not. He's also great at the legal side of things. So while, I'm the money raiser, the networker, and possibly the deal finder, whatever it is, and we leverage each other to make that work. And you got to have that trust. And I think that there's no way I could have done this by myself, or even with a different partner. So I'm thankful for that, and kind of getting off on what his comment was. But with experience new people have to realize that with experience comes the simplicity that leads more to the probability and the leverage.
Yes.
So
I like that.
That's part of the leverage that you're talking about, though. That's that third part, is leveraging partnerships and skill sets. You're more personable. I don't know if that's the right word. You're a better networker than I am. I could certainly do it. I don't mind talking to people, but I'm also very comfortable just.
Dude, that's such a limiting mindset, bro. Wow,
I do talk. I'm on the podcast. I'm at the meetup. I do stuff, but it's more natural for Darren. And if he's out there being a little bit more of the face, and I'm like quickly analyzing deals and saying we've got something to work on here or not, then we're working on two fronts.
Yes.
So that, I think that's very important, is to recognize your abilities and double down on them. But yeah, you do have to, take on all roles to some extent. No, but nobody should be completely oblivious to another important aspect of the business.
Yeah. To your credit, you will admit that this business has made you come out of your shell, and you're very thankful.
Oh yeah.
Like we have a meetup. We started a meetup 2 years ago, and it's been awesome. We've helped so many people in that meetup. I mean, pat ourselves on the back. We've helped people gain clarity and value in multifamily and how to do things at a very concrete, basic local level. And I love the fact that we've been able to help people with that. And, you speak in front of crowds, and you're on call after call after call during the week, accountability pods, this. Hey, podcast was Greg's brainchild. And so he gets all the credit, and Kim does all the stuff behind the scenes. I just show up. I joke about it, but it's freaking true. And I'm thankful for that, to be totally honest.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right. And inevitably there are things in the background that people don't even realize is going on. And, Kim is a big part of that too. So it is very, the leverage part of it, I think, comes down off into finding some key relationships.
Does she know what a cap rate is? Because my wife still
Yeah.
can't understand what a cap rate is. Good. My wife could
Yep.
care less about real estate. That's the funniest thing in the world. It's like, not real estate, but she can get a guy to write a book. And she's like, yeah, good job, Gina. Julie, we just refied $300,000. I made more money in a refi than I did in a year and a half slinging pizzas. Good job.
Mhm.
I'm like, really? Good job. Like, you can't get better. But you know what? That's just the way it is. I mean, like, it's just when you deal with partnerships, it's the same thing with spouses, right? I mean, like, I'll do anything for the family and she'll do anything for me. So it's not like we have to go around and saying, oh, great job. And it's just like, it's expected from a partner. Like Jake is not going to say to me, oh, you got on early this morning. Great job. He's up at 6 a.m. too. I mean, so when you're working with a partner, we didn't touch on partnerships, but it's really important. Value-based decision-making. Are you both working hard? Don't tell me you're too busy. You've got kids. I got 6 kids. Don't tell me you know what I'm saying? I don't want to hear people are busy. What are you talking about busy? I was working 60 hours a week at the restaurant. I was doing lunch, sitting down. I was doing podcasts. I was homeschooling my kids, and I was probably doing 80 hours. And it's hard work. Work in a restaurant when you're sweating your ass off during the holidays, when people are being assholes, and you're trying to do a podcast with Robert Kiyosaki. Go do that. Don't tell me hard. If it's too hard, then you don't want it bad enough. That's the reality. I wanted it bad enough. Do you want it bad enough? I didn't want to be at the restaurant on Christmas Eve at 6 a.m, get home at 10 at night. That's what it came down to. I didn't want to do that anymore. It was great when I was young, but as my kids were getting older, I missed too many parties. I missed too many recitals. I was working on Easter. Come on, man. I didn't want to do that. If you don't want to do that, don't make excuses. It's going to be hard. There's a lot of hard work. It's still hard. I am financially free right now, but I'm probably working harder now than I was at the restaurant, but I love what I'm doing and I'm making more money and I'm chasing opportunities. I'm not chasing money right now. That's the difference. I enjoy what I do. I don't want my kids to see me get up in the morning, go to the restaurant, hate my job, and say, well, dad works hard. He hates work. No, I didn't want that. I want them to see me getting up in the morning, jumping on a podcast, going to breakfast after that, being pumped up and enjoying what I'm doing. That's what really motivated me more than anything else, because the money, I would figure it out one way or another. We're pretty frugal. So we didn't need to have a ton of money. That's not really what I was doing it for. Ultimately, I was doing it because I wanted to do something fun. I don't want to retire. I'm never retiring. I don't know what the hell this word retiring is. Mr. Bismarck back in the 1890s figured that he needed to get rid of the old population and get the young guys a job. There's socialism, everybody. We don't want that shit. You know what I mean? So Mr. What's his name comes back in the 1930s and sets up Social Security and says, yeah, we're gonna make it 62 years old. Man, there's no such thing as retirement. People, when you get older, continue to work, continue to find what you like, continue to help others. There's no such thing as retirement. Once you retire, you're done, man. Just don't do that. Figure out something you like to do. That's why I became a coach. I love coaching because you know what? When I'm 7 years old and I can't walk or whatever, I could still pick up the phone and help people. So I don't know why I went off on that rant, but
No, dude, I was just thinking, because that was, completely unscripted. I mean, that was like you just heard Gino's why in a very transparent way, and I was completely identifying with you, with frustration with. I mean, I would call you from the Frito-Lay truck when you guys were just getting,
remember that.
Wheelbarrow Profits started. I'm like the OG, and it was the same thing for me. It's like my W-2 job accomplished a lot for me, but I did not enjoy it. And that's what, like, a very big why for me is just so that not only myself, but my kids can see, like, it is possible to transition and do whatever the hell you want. Cause I haven't had a day off since I've done real estate. There's no days off.
But big shout out to Greg Scully. You know why? He lives in Alaska and he went to MM1. He flew to Knoxville from Alaska. That's like a journey. That's a mecca, okay? So that didn't stop him from doing that, right? And he didn't make the excuse, oh, well, it cost me too much money. It's too much time. No, he showed up at MM1. Then he showed up in MM2, and then he met his partners there, and he got his deals there. So that's what it is. It's hard work. I'm not the only one out there working hard. Darren's doing houses, same thing. It's a lot of hard work, but it's okay, because if you like what you're doing and you have the vision and you understand why you're doing it, you can get over those tough days, because we've all been kicked in the teeth. That's not the problem. You're going to get kicked in the teeth at your W-2. If I'd stayed at the restaurant, like I said, right now, I'd be a blathering idiot right now. I'd be calling for Cuomo's head right now. I still am, but I'd be calling for Cuomo's head for a different reason, because I'd be shut down for a year, right? So I could either accept that or accept that reality and say, okay, but don't complain about it, or try to do something and try to work out. And if it doesn't work out, you can go back to Alaska, Greg. You can go back to driving the truck, and I can go back to the restaurant flipping pizzas. But if we didn't take that chance, then it would suck. We wouldn't be where we are right now.
Not only did he come to the MM1, he eventually was W2 and moved to Tennessee.
I remember that too. I remember him getting out of that elevator. I was like, holy crap, this guy came from, I've never even met someone from Alaska before. This guy came from Alaska, right? New Yorkers don't mean Alaskans. You know what I'm saying? We don't do that kind of stuff. So he's way out of the continental United. I'm talking, dude, whoa. And I'm like, it was just, that's when I said to myself, that's when I can tell somebody's going to make it, right? Because there's no excuses, right? And for me, that was the biggest mistake that I made early on with the restaurant. I couldn't take weekends off to go to live events. I mean, really, I was self-sabotaging myself because I didn't want to get out there. I was the Greg of the world. I wasn't the extrovert. I was the guy who liked to stay in the corner and not make too much noise. I mean, it took me like 400 podcasts to come out of my shell, right? I'm a slow learner, but it's the same thing as you. I can make that excuse and that limiting belief. Well, I'm not an introvert. I'm not an extrovert. I'm an ambivert, as they like to say. When I need to do it, I do it. I don't feel comfortable, but as an entrepreneur, as try to build a brand, we all need to have that skill. We all need to learn how to sell, whether you're selling an investor, whether you're selling a broker, whether you're selling your wife to write a book, whatever that may look like, you need to be able to do that. So that the actions that you take will decide if you're successful or not. And you getting on that plane and coming out there, you were all locked in, ready to go. That's you had that plan. You were maybe 20 years ago, you wouldn't have been at that pain point, but at that part of your life, you're like, that's it. I got to get out of here. I don't know. How do you live in Alaska when it's that damn cold, man? I can't figure that out.
It seems like we could have moved a little bit sooner in retrospect.
You don't know what you don't know, right? It's the same thing with me in New York. Every year in New York, it's January,
right.
it's 20 degrees, and I'm complaining. Down here in Florida, it's 70 degrees. Why did it take me so long?
And I think there's something to that just in general, that people tend to find a way to be comfortable in whatever surrounding that they are in, just because.
Yes.
I mean, why did I stay? I was born there. I didn't really know any different, and it was fine, and it was great. Actually, we enjoyed it. I'm going back in April to hang out with some friends at, in a remote cabin. And so it'll still be a place for us. But yeah, I think a lot of times you don't make change because you're comfortable, and I got uncomfortable enough. Because moving was hard. I mean, there was, you did the same thing. You're disrupting your children's schedules. You're like, and at some point you just like, they'll be fine.
This is important. This is for all the parents out there, and I get this a lot. And they're like, "Oh, well, it's easy for you. You homeschool." It's the same thing. Your happiness and your wife's happiness, or your spouse or partner's happiness, is more important than your children's happiness, and that's probably a scary thing to say, but it's the reality. Because if you're miserable and you hate what you're doing, it don't matter with your kid. Your kid's going to feed off that. When we moved down here, the oldest one was going to college here. She loved it. The youngest one could care less. The ones in the middle were a little pissed off. My son liked it, but it took a couple of years, and finally they pulled through, and they all really love it now. They couldn't imagine being in New York wearing masks and being afraid and being locked down. That's just a total paradigm. But for me, I took the leap, and my wife says, we're going to do this because it's going to make you happy. And if you're happy, I'm happy. And then that'll trickle down. Was it easy? Nothing is easy, uprooting, 6 people, taking them from their grandparents and all. But looking back, now everyone's fleeing down here. So I did the right thing. But, worry about if you're taking your kids out of school and taking away from their friends, they're going to make new friends. I mean, like, I know people like, they're going to make new friends. My kids have all new friends down here, and they have friends from up north still that they worry about. So worry about what you need to do, and then build your life around you. And then, because they're leaving, my kids are older. One of them is already going to go to college. She's going to go to Poland and study next semester. So she's out. So if I worried about, her friends, she's on with her life. I mean, I have to take care of all the other little guys and myself. So worry about your happiness. Worry about what's going to make your life better. And then from there, it'll just permeate through. You see, Greg, Darren, the kids. I mean, the kids are well adjusted. They're like, you know what? If dad's happy, we're happy. And that's what most people get hung up on. Don't make excuses. That means you don't want to move bad enough. That's what it comes down to. Don't blame your children. Don't give the excuse of it's I can't take them out of school. Really? Well, right now they're all Zoom learning anyway, so nobody's in school anyway. So that's a pretty lame ass excuse, right?
Yeah, that strikes a chord with me too. The being able to do things for yourself. I think it does take a certain amount of selfishness to achieve your own happiness, because it does trickle down, and people do feed off of it. Because, I mean, sometimes you can walk into a room and just feel that somebody is off. You see the expression on their face or whatever, that Yeah. And kids pick up on that for sure.
I
So
don't want to make everyone think that I'm a selfish guy. And like I said, my kids are around me 24/7. We homeschool them. So I don't want to think it that way. But at the same time, sometimes you have to not use them as an excuse, because I was using them early on as an excuse not to get out of the restaurant, because I was told by people, well, you have 6 mouths to feed. You can't take that risk. Really, I'm holding myself back because I'm using them as the excuse. Don't do that. Look inside of you, look what you need to do, and then figure it out. I went to coaching school. That's what really pulled me through. It made me understand that, what my why is, and then figure out how to do it. And I knew the restaurant wasn't the avenue, and I selected multifamily.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll stick on the selfishness thing. I didn't, I don't hear it that you're being selfish. I think you just have to recognize, if your goal is ultimately the health and wellness of your family,
Hmm.
your goal has to also be the health and wellness of yourself, because
Hmm.
this the first one can't happen. Well, the, it rolls downhill. If you're
Hmm.
not in a good space, the people around you are not going to
Not
be in a good
exactly.
space, and that's what I mean by selfishness. Is
Hmm.
you, to some extent, you have to be priority number one for the other things to happen the way you want them to be. It's a little bit
Hmm.
difficult to kind of wrap your head around. It's a very Ayn Rand type thing.
Yes.
It,
Hmm.
but anyway, that was a great tangent. I love that one.
Jake will love that reference if he listens to this. Anyway.
I still read that stuff. Well, it's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. Well, let's drop it there. We're going to come up against a time constraint, and I think that was a good a good pause. Yeah, Gino, full disclosure, if people haven't already figured it out, we're, uh, we're in your program. We've been in it for years, and I've seen tremendous benefit from it personally, and in our business as well. So that's a plug for you. That's also just a plug for education in general. A lot of this business is learning and networking, and that is one huge advantage of these organized groups. Is if you're serious about it, you can add some rocket fuel to your journey by you know being in proximity with other people with common goals. Even if you're not doing a
Uh-huh.
deal with them, just the energy that you get from people that are very positive and uh, encouraging, that's invaluable. um,
I would say everybody out there, if you're going to decide to go the education route, and I think everybody should at one time or another, because like I said, Jake and I over the last 2 to 3 years, we've spent over $500,000 seriously on coaching, with whether it was a scaling up coaching, whether it was speaker coaching. I mean, all the different types of coaching. I have a business coach right now continuing on, because I still want to continue to write books. It's not easy to write a book and to launch a book. I've never really done it before, so I'm continuing to learn that process. So if you're really serious about it, look at it, a group, a mentor. I don't want to use the word guru because they get the negative connotation, but do they have the same values you do? I mean, have they done what you want to do? It's that simple. And then look at that cost as an investment. Early on, I thought of it as a cost. It's almost like whole life insurance. Everyone looks at it as a cost, right? Because you got to put in 5 grand a year, 10 grand a year for your premium. You don't see it, it's locked away. That's really an investment for the future. You always have that. So find people who resonate with you. Think of it as an investment. And it's that accountability piece that Julia is helping you write the book. Because if you have skin in the game, you're paying for your education, you're going to take action. But if you're on a Facebook group that's for free, you show up one day, the next day you're not there. But if you've got to come down to the Buy Right Boot Camp in Jacksonville in February, book the flight, pay for the hotel, take the weekend off from work, and show up and then have a great time, there's a big difference in that person becoming successful than the one staying home watching a weekend webinar, and he can turn on his phone and not pay attention. There's a big difference. So it's not just, oh, I'm going to get educated, but I'm going to be held accountable, and I'm going to find a lot of like-minded people. And you said that word proximity. It's really important to really surround yourself with people who are amazing, who lift your level of energy. And that's why for me, the Jake and Gino community, throughout this whole entire pandemic, we've been doing these events. I've had a great year. I mean, because I've been around people who want to be around. I've been around people who, like, one way or the other, they look at the pandemic. it's there, but they're still going on with their lives and they're trying to figure it out. And we're not watching the news, and we're dealing with our lives. And it's amazing to have people like that. We have 100 people coming at the Money Mixer in April. I can't wait. 2 buses driving around looking at properties. That is freaking exciting. It's gonna be a great weekend. So when I'm done with that weekend, in June, we have the manager right boot camp. So every like 8 weeks, 10 weeks, I'm together with the community. And that keeps my level of energy up. So I look around and go, well, they haven't found the deal. They haven't found a deal. I'm not the only moron who's not finding the deals. That's okay. That's what it comes down to when you're around people like you're figuring it out. So for me, it's important. Just find somebody who's got the same values you do as an educator, has got the same mindset as you do, and has done what you want to do. It's that simple. And don't look at it as an expense. Look at it as an investment, because I've made a lot of investments in my life, and all those skills that I've learned, they're with me forever. I've learned them, and they're going to continue on forever with me.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Darren, you want to add anything before we do
No.
the wrap up?
Good cutoff point.
Good mic drop there. Cool. Well, thank you, Gino. Do you want to tell us or tell our wonderful listeners, how did they get a hold of you? How did they check you out? What are the best places to get introduced to Jake and Gino? Had they not already made that introduction?
Just go to the website, jakeandgino.com. We have got podcasts on there. We've got our blog articles. Our students are writing blogs for us. If you want a copy of the book, Creative Cash, email me, gino@jakeandgino.com. If you leave a review, send me a screen grab. I'll send you a hard copy in the mail. We're trying to get to 100 reviews. It's a great book, honestly. I mean, if you're looking into getting into real estate and you say you don't have the money, don't let lack of money hold you back. It's lack of skill and lack of creativity. This book has got a lot of creativity in it. You're going to learn some great skills. So just go to jakeandgino.com and check us out.
All right. Right on. Well, thank you all for joining us. The Real Wealth Solutions podcast for Darren Light. My name is Greg Scully. Gino, again, thank you for your time today. And we will see you all on the next episode.
Thanks, Gino.
Thanks, guys.